Hey everybody, welcome back to Furniture Flipping Teacher. I'm Lauren. In this video, I'm gonna be making over this oak coffee table. I think it is the cutest coffee table that I have come across in a long time. This is actually a custom project. So one of my clients brought this to the shop and wants me to give it a fresh new look. It has quite a bit of damage on the top as far as like watermarks and stuff goes. So we're gonna be giving this a lot of love, needs a lot of love. I'm so excited to get working on this flip. Let's do it. So the first order of business is going to be to strip this table. I have recently discovered acetone to be a really great stripper, and I am going to give it a go on this coffee table. The finish of the top especially is like very failing. That doesn't even make any sense, but it's failing really bad. And like I said in the beginning, there are a lot of watermarks on the top. So I'm hoping that stripping back the remainder of the finish that is on there, as well as just applying the acetone to the surface, is going to help give us at least a little bit of an up when we begin to sand. It's gonna help us not have to sand so much. I'm pretty sure that this is a veneer over the top. I think the table is all solid wood, but I do think that there is a veneer on the top simply because there are some areas that are lifting a little bit and kind of bubbling up. So I'm also gonna have to address those. It's not anything crazy, but it is something that needs a little bit more attention. All right, y'all, I'm gonna take a quick pause on that table and talk to you about Lumi, which is the only deodorant that I trust to keep me smelling fresh all day, everywhere. And when I say everywhere, I mean everywhere. My pits, my belly button, my feet, you name it, everywhere. But what I've really been loving lately out of all of their products is their acidified body wash. This stuff is a game changer. Not only does it leave my skin feeling super clean, but it is also pH optimized to support healthy skin and control odor before it even starts. Basically, it's like giving your skin a fresh start every time you shower. And here's the kicker, Lumi is actually clinically proven to block body odor for up to 72 hours. No joke. It was actually invented by an OBGYN, so you know that it's safe and effective. Plus, it's baking soda free, paraben free, and totally cruelty free. So that's all in one. Such an even better product just because of those things. My favorite scent of Lumi is the soft powder because it just makes me feel the most clean and the most fresh, but I am super excited because they've got a new vanilla scent that is coming out that I'm really excited to try. Right now, Lumi is having an amazing deal for new customers. The starter pack bundle, which I've got right behind me, is actually gonna come with a full stick of deodorant, a cream or a spray deodorant, and 2 free bonus products like wipes or a mini body wash, which is my favorite product. They have free US shipping included, and because Lumi loves y'all so much, you can get an extra $5 off when you click the link in the description and use my code at checkout. That is up to 40% off. Don't wait, trust me. You're gonna wanna try this. Hit that link down below and let me know your favorite scent down in the comments. So if you saw my video a few weeks ago, I started using acetone as my stripper, and it is a really simple and to me less messy than a normal furniture stripper way to get the finish off of things. I had so many questions about just the use of the acetone, so hopefully this video will address some more of those questions. One of the top questions was, can you use acetone to strip paint? I have not personally tried this, but I've seen other people use this method to strip paint, and then also it is, you know, a great fingernail polish remover, and that's paint. So to me, acetone would work with paint. I think it's really important to just make sure that you test small areas of your furniture if you're unsure, and that way you can get the feel for it on your own and make sure that this is the right product. So I'm gonna start with the top, see what we've got working for us as far as the acetone goes, and then we'll move on from there. So the key thing that I learned when I was doing the other pieces of furniture is to work in small areas so that way the acetone doesn't dry up and get super sticky super quick. I have my acetone in a smaller container. I've got my gloves on, glasses on, mask on, and then I have my chip brush. This is the method that I liked using the best. You could also use like a scrub brush or a scraper or something like that, but this was just my favorite method out of all of the ones that I tried. So I'm just gonna begin applying it to an area and we'll see if it starts working. I haven't ever tried it on this type of material, so we'll just kind of have to see. It may not work on this. It may not work everywhere, I don't know. The color's definitely starting to come off. Taking a little bit longer to start working than the other project took. Interesting, okay, so to me, that didn't, I mean, it took, you know, some of the finish off. It didn't really change the color much of the table, so I'm gonna apply another layer, see what happens. It could be because, like I said, there's barely any finish on this. And when I say finish, I mean like the top coat that seals up everything. It's pretty much gone on this, and that might be what the acetone really eats away at. That could be kind of the issue here with this. It's taking off a little bit of color, but overall, this isn't necessarily working like I had kind of thought it would. I'm gonna try a little bit of a different area, see what happens here. All right, so in my opinion, the acetone it's taking the top layer of finish off for sure, but it's just not really making a huge visible difference. I think I'm still gonna go ahead and apply it to the rest of the top just because I am seeing like a tiny, tiny difference. It may be hard to see on camera, but it is taking the finish off, and I think that's gonna be good in the end for sanding, that I won't have to sand as much. I'm a little nervous about busting through that veneer. As always, it's so important to be careful when you're working with veneer, and whenever it's a custom client's piece, then I need to be extra, extra careful because this is, you know, someone else's piece that I cannot mess up. So let's keep going with the acetone for the rest of the top, and then we'll move on to sanding. The entire thing is all stripped, at least the finish is, with the acetone. So I'm gonna bust out my sander next, and we're gonna see what's truly underneath this color, and hoping that a lot of these stains are going to be able to be sanded out. Let's get the sander out. I've got a 180 grit on my 3x4 Surf Prep sander here. This, I also have a sponge foam abrasive on it as well because I just really want to be careful, especially around the edges. So this is going to just make it a little bit softer, not make the sanding as harsh as if it were just like this harder, the actual sander portion. So I'm gonna take my time. It may take me a bit more of time than it would if I were just to like go to town and not be careful. But again, I'd rather have it take a bit more time, but do it right and not bust through any veneer than I would like, you know, mess it up. So let's get to sanding. I got the top sanded down. I did a couple of grits. I did a 180 grit with that sponge sander, and then I also did go ahead and do like a 220 grit across the top as well. And I think it's looking really good. There was one spot that was like a little trickier getting the water ring out, but I think overall it's really, really good and everything sanded out super nice. So I'm gonna now move on to the rest of the table. Since I got the top done, I'm gonna kind of just continue to work my way down. I may or may not detach the top after, like once I'm down getting the base, because I think it would be a little bit easier working like that. But I'm gonna go ahead and start working on the lip of the coffee table right now. And I'm just gonna go in with my sander to start, see kind of like just what I'm working with and if that is going to do the job, or if I should go in with the acetone again and start removing the finish. But I'm gonna start out with a 120 grit. This is the solid wood portion of the table, so not worried about any veneer getting busted through. Let's do it. So I ended up getting the lip sanded and then this little skirting board down here as well, and it sanded back really nicely. I had to be a bit careful because like this again is veneer covering some, I think plywood that they've curved. But now we're gonna move on to the base portion, and I think there's just 6 screws that will, maybe a few more, that will help me get the top off of the base. That way it'll be just a little bit easier for me to sand down with not having to get into like crouch down low, and then also just like get into all of these curves. So I'm gonna use my drill, unscrew some of the screws I think should help detach it. Hopefully there's not like glue and stuff. And then we'll continue sanding. Everything has been sanded down with a 120 grit and then a 180 grit and a 220 grit so that everything is nice and smooth. Now, my client would like this to be the raw wood color, but if I were to just put a top coat right over this it would begin to turn a little bit golden and kind of orangey because it is oak. A lot of the times woods do have some more of like an orangey undertone to them. And so the way that we are gonna combat that is we are going to put a paint wash over the top. There's a couple of different ways that you could do this. I've done a paint wash with a stain and kind of just like, especially water-based stains, just kind of put it over the top of it and then wiped it back pretty quick. Or the other way that you can do this is to get a more neutral color. So for this, I'm gonna be using Fusion Mineral Paints Algonquin. This is a really popular color to do paint washes with. And then I am gonna mix it with water. I'm probably gonna do like 1 part Algonquin and like 3 or 4 parts water, because I do not want it to really change the coloring as it stands. I want it to really look the same, but this is going to make it so that the coloring doesn't turn golden once I put that top coat on. So it is a little bit of an extra step, but in order to achieve the exact color and look that we want, I want to go this extra step to be able to get the right look. So I forgot to grab my water. So what you're gonna need is a separate container from your paint canister. I honestly just love to reuse items that I've used in the kitchen, like food jars. So I eat cottage cheese all the time, so I use those a lot. And then also like salsa, pickles, things like that. So this is an organic salsa container that I have. And then this is an old salsa container, I think too, that I just like to keep water in. So what I'm gonna do is just make sure this paint is all shook up. And I am going to go ahead and pour that into probably a bit too much. There's no real measurements with paint washes, to be honest. A lot of the times it's just measure with your heart. So I put about that much paint in there, so I'm going to put some water in there as well. Again, I'm really going to be watering this down quite a bit, and then I'm going to go ahead and shake this up so that we can get all the water and paint nicely dispersed so we have one consistency. A lot of the times the paint likes to sink to the bottom, and that is great, but also not great, because when you get to the bottom, then it's going to be more concentrated down there. So I like to dilute it all together. If I need more water, I can always add more water or more paint later. The other thing that I like to use are gloves, because this can get a bit messy. It's washable paint, but, well, like washable off your hands. But the reason that it gets messy is because I'm gonna be applying it with a zebra brush, my favorite zebra brush, the Palm Pro. But then I'm gonna be wiping back the excess with a paper towel. So that's where like your hands can get a little bit messy on that front. So now that we've got this all mixed together, I'm gonna start on the legs, and I'm just gonna dip my zebra brush into the container here, and then I'm going to apply the paint wash to the leg. See, there will be a bit of coloring, which is what we want, but then we don't want it to sit on there for too long before we wipe it back. And ultimately, there shouldn't be much of a change in coloring. It's just gonna take out that golden color that we see without the paint wash. Now, this totally depends on how much you want your paint wash to show. Sometimes I do a much more concentrated paint wash where I do like half and half or something like that, because I want that paint wash to be a bit more visible. But for this one specifically, we want it to be super light. So pretty much immediately after getting the coverage on the area I'm working on, notice how I'm working in areas, then I'm going back and I am wiping that back. If I didn't work in areas, then it would begin to dry into the surface too quickly and give me too dark of a paint wash. So that's why I'm working in sections versus the entire leg at a time. So just as a little visual, here is the difference between the two legs. This one over here, I've paint washed. This one I haven't. So you can see there's a little bit more yellowy orangey tone in this one. The paint wash just took that yellowy orangey hue out of it. So that way when we do the paint wash or the top coat, it will not be that golden color anymore. So this is looking really good. I'm gonna move on to the next set of the next legs over here. Then we'll do the base and then we'll do the top as well. They're all getting a paint wash. So let's do it. It is next time for the top coat, and then we'll be able to put this thing back together. I love the way that this paint wash made this oak table look. It totally eliminated the golden, little bit of yellowy tone that was in the oak, and it is feeling so soft. Sometimes the paint wash can, make the wood fibers open up, which, I mean, it will pretty much every time, but this has totally smoothed out. And so I'm not even going to do a sanding coat right now. I probably will between coats of top coat, but for now, it is good to go. I am gonna be using a flat top coat by Dixie Belle, and my client did not want any sheen. She just wanted it super matte, but wanted it well protected. And I told her, flat is the least protectant or like the least durable of all of the sheens of top coat. But as long as you're doing multiple coats of the flat, it will still protect really well. So just keep that in mind when you're choosing top coats. You want to probably do like more coats of a flat top coat than you might of like a satin or a gloss. And I am going to be brushing on the top coat. I oftentimes get questions on, why did you brush this versus spray this, or why did you spray this versus brush this? Usually it's why are you brushing it on when you have a sprayer? And there's a couple of different reasons. Sometimes I just don't want to get the sprayer out and go through all of the setup. It's not a ton, but sometimes I just want to get my brush out and go to town. And then the other reason is to switch it up for you guys so that the content doesn't get dull, but then also not everyone has a sprayer and not everyone is confident enough to try out a sprayer yet, and that is totally okay. And so that's why I like to switch up the content here and there, do different methods so that I can continue teaching all of you and not just cater toward those people who like spraying. So whenever I do use brushes, I use Zebra brushes, and they actually have their own line of top coat brushes. They have the yellow or kind of more brownish bristles, but these are specifically meant for top coat. So that's what I'm going to be using to first go ahead and do the top here, and then I'll move to the legs and the base of the entire table. I'm gonna go with the direction of the grain of the wood so that just in case there are any streaks that may occur, and sometimes it does happen with the top coat, then those will be way less visible than it would be if I just started going in every which direction or specifically against the wood grain. So again, if I would not have done that paint wash, this would begin to turn very orangey, and this will still darken it just a tad bit, but it's not going to change the color, like the tone of it. So that is the idea behind a paint wash. The last step is to get this all put back together. So I'm gonna go ahead and move the tabletop upside down on this blanket, and then I'm gonna screw the base back on and the legs back on, and then we'll be all finished up. All right, it's almost time for the final review. Let's take a look back at what we started with this coffee table. I always like to look back because it makes a difference, I feel, like looking back at where we started versus what it looks like now. So we started out with this cute, but a little bit worn down and needing a lot of love table that is all oak and needed to be completely sanded down and refinished, and that is exactly what we did, and this is the final result. I love this wood tone. I think that it's the perfect oak look, and again, that paint wash just really was able to take out that golden orangey tone that is always, you know, from the 80s, 90s era. You probably potentially even have it in your own home around the baseboards, the doors, etc., etc. It's a very, very common shade of oak, but it is not very popular any longer. So I am so glad that I was able to make this over for my client. She found it at a garage sale. I don't know how much she paid, but this was totally worth the pickup, and it came to life in such a new way. I can't wait till she sees it. Let's talk about some numbers. So I got this table obviously for free since my client brought it to me, but I do have this rule that I do not do any pieces under $400. And that is mostly for time's sake. Like, I don't want to be wasting my time on projects that are not worth the turnaround or like the, you know, the profit that I am charging. Now, sometimes that may mean that pieces, you know, you technically could be like overcharged, but that's my rule, and that is totally up to the person who is getting the work done. If they still want to get a coffee table refinished for $400, then so be it. And so she was totally on board with that price. So she brought it in, and so that means $400 for this makeover. I encourage you to also have a limit of the lowest amount of something that you may do. If it's a small side table or something like that, like I just most of the time don't want to be wasting time on smaller projects for clients when it's just not worth my time at the end of the day. So let's talk about some of the numbers as far as like what costs went into this. A lot of it was just labor time. I would say that I didn't spend more than $20 to $25 on actual material costs, because a lot of it was just like I did a little tiny bit of acetone. That entire jug was $20, and plus it was from another project. So let's just say, you know, maybe $5 in acetone, even though I don't even think it was that much. And then sandpaper, that costs probably around $10. And then the paint wash, I used, you know, mere ounces of paint that I already had on hand, so another $5. And then the same thing with the top coat, probably another $5 worth. So we'll graciously, generously give it $25 for all of the the material costs, but a lot of labor did go into this. I had to be super careful not to bust through the veneer. And I think that ultimately it turned out really great. I would love to hear about what your thoughts are on the final look of the table. Is there a oak piece of furniture potentially around your own home that could get this same makeover so that you could just update the things that you have around your home? Maybe so. It's a pretty simple update, but it totally does so much for your space and for the piece. So I hope you enjoyed this video. Thanks so much for watching. I'll be back next week with another furniture flip, and I'll see you on the flip side. Oh, and one more thing. Thanks so much to Lumi for sponsoring today's video. Check out those links down below in the description so that you can get your starter pack today. Bye, guys.